Good afternoon, Rhode Nation. Marks and Mark is back for another week here on WRIU. We're back with another special guest. Obviously, as most of you know, here at the University of Rhode Island, we have Family Weekend coming up tomorrow as URI football takes on Bryant in a yearly anticipated matchup. It's a matchup everybody knows and loves, emotionally charged contest, always a lot of touchdowns. So I knew I had to get a good guest for this week. And who better to bring in with Parents Weekend, Family Weekend coming up tomorrow than the quarterback of the Rhode Island Rams, Kasim Hill. Kasim, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. This is one that I've been looking forward to speaking with you for a long time. I mean, you've got a great story. Just to start it off, I mean, coming back, year 7 in college football. It's a feat that you don't see very often. I mean, with the transfer portal and all the new eligibility waivers, you're starting to see longer college careers. But, I mean, 7 years, just what was sort of the thought process like this summer when you were trying to get that waiver?
You know, when we started with the waiver process, first it started with me going and talking to my family, of course, just trying to figure out what the, best next steps will be. Then going and talking to Coach Murph and Coach Flem, and a lot of help from Casey Light. Shout out to Casey. She's the GOAT, and I hope she hears that. But, it's just a long process of thinking through all the different sides and stuff. But obviously, I wanted to come back, and just waiting around for that, that it was through, was a lot of stress, but definitely a happy moment when it came.
That's fantastic. I mean, just like, what were some of the thoughts going through your head when you were thinking about you wanted to come back? I mean, obviously, last year, you were so close to making the FCS national tournament. So obviously there's that idea of like the job's not finished, like that sort of mentality. But you saw a number of guys enter the transfer portal, a number of guys graduate. I mean, like Ed Lee, one of your best friends, one of your top receivers, he ended up graduating. So you're looking at a roster coming in with a lot of question marks. You got a coaching staff with a bunch of new coaches coming in with question marks. I mean, just like, as you're entering the summer, just what were some of your thoughts in terms of like, all right, this is going to make me want to stay versus this is what's going to make me want to make the jump to possibly go to the NFL?
I think just the relationships that, I did form with the people here in the community. When I transferred here in 2020, it was, a lot of unknowns. COVID played a part in that, but, just didn't really know the area as well as I do now. Didn't know the people as well as I do, but, this is home to me, home away from home, 16 hours from home, but everybody here makes it like a family, and, that was the biggest reason why I wanted to come back. Can't let the core group go without getting the job done.
Yeah, and I mean, just like when it was announced that you were coming back, the URI community was just so excited because obviously everyone got a taste of football success here last year because over the past few years, the URI football team has just not been successful. It's just been one of those programs, one of those New England programs that's just like, yeah, it's a school that has a football team, but it's not been one that's been particularly memorable. But since Coach Fleming took over and in the years post-COVID, the team has been steadily trending upwards. And it's been fantastic to see. And then you're obviously one of the main reasons for that. And I mean, just the amount of records that you could be possibly chasing down this year, the amount of records that you already have. So many different things are going into like what caused people to be excited about this year. And that's something that we will touch on soon enough because there's so many different things to talk about. But like I said, 7th year college senior, you've been here for 4 years. But before that, you were a graduate of St. John's College in Washington, D.C. A number of URI athletes have come out of there. I mean, you take like yourself, you take Ed Lee, graduated last year, prospective NFL draftee, got signed by the Patriots. And you take Ish Leggett, just transferred over to Pitt, another guy from St. John's College. David Cox was the men's basketball coach, another guy from St. John's College. I mean, just like kind of thinking about that, obviously URI wasn't the destination you were thinking about coming out of D.C., but when you think about it now, it's pretty interesting to see so many people from St. John's end up at URI.
Yeah, it's like a little mini pipeline.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm just coming out of high school. You're a 4-star recruit. You're looking to try and make your name for yourself in Division I football, and you end up landing on Maryland. I mean, just like, what was that process like, really trying to, go through the college recruiting process?
When gotta think back, that was a while ago. When I first decided on Maryland, it was primarily because it was close to home. It was, I think, 25 minutes from my apartment to my front doorstep. And I have a really special relationship with my sister and my parents, so I wanted to be close to home. I couldn't think about not even being as close as or as far as I am now from home. But that was the main reason. And then, a bunch of my friends were going there, like our whole little conference, the WCAC, a bunch of us were going there, and it was like, we're like, okay, we'll turn this into a little conference all-star team up in Maryland. But yeah, those are the main two reasons.
That's really cool. I mean, Maryland is another team where it's like, it seems that there are some years where it's one of the best programs on the East Coast, but then there's a few years where it sort of sputters out. I mean, your freshman year, you play a few games, and then at the end of the year, you decide to transfer. Correct me if I'm wrong. That was the year when there was a lot of like coaching turmoil. A bunch of the coaching staff left. I mean, it's pretty much a clear-cut case as to probably why you would want to transfer. The guys that came in, they ended up leaving.
Just kind of needed a fresh start with everything, 2 injuries, and then the situation with, one of my teammates. Just need a fresh start on a new place.
And that's, like I said, like earlier, like the transfer portal obviously becoming prevalent now. It was still around back then. So, like, obviously it provides athletes like you to kind of get that fresh start in a sense. And so when you entered the portal, because it seems like the portal has evolved a lot since then. And it seems like during that time, it wasn't as easy necessarily or like as clear cut to be able to jump ship to another program. So I mean, like, when you were hopping in that portal that first time, kind of what was that like? Was there like a lot of nerves? Like, oh, am I going to be able to join another program sort of like Maryland?
Yeah, it was a little nerve-wracking just because of the unknown. But yeah, going through that process, just, again, sitting down with my family, trying to figure out, like, just like we did with the high school recruiting process, just figure out what's best for me, what are the things that are most important to me, and finally made a decision to go to Tennessee. Good coaching staff that, cared about the players, and, it was another step on helping me along my journey. So happy with that decision.
And so then you go to Tennessee, you go there after Maryland, and you're a part of the scout team. Was your involvement at Tennessee, was that like what you were expecting? Like, were you going into a situation that had a strong quarterback room and you were trying to fight your way in? Just sort of what was the situation that you were expecting versus what you ended up in?
So during that season, so the previous season I had torn my ACL for the second time, opposite knee, but, the second time. So the talks that I had with Tennessee was that I was going to, and you had to sit out a year back then when you transferred. So sitting out, going to run the scout team and get reps in practice with the offense here and there throughout the season. So that's pretty much what I did. That's what I expected. Just show what I could do you get to go against the first team defense every single week. And, that was a defense I think I had 5 or 6 NFL guys on it right now. So, that was a positive of it.
Yeah, and an impressive test for someone that's really still trying to make your name for yourself. And then, obviously, like, it sort of sputtered out at Tennessee, and you decide to hop in the portal again. But at this point, you're now a second-time transfer. The options, were they more limited now that, like, because it's something that you don't really hear from like an outside perspective when you're looking at how like the transfer portal works in terms of like, all right, you've hopped in once, you've got somewhat pick of the bunch, but then when you hop in again, you kind of get less of a look. Some people become more skeptical. I mean, like, what was that like for you?
Honestly, when I went in the second time was kind of because of COVID and a whole bunch of stuff was going on. When I went in the portal, me and Ed were real close throughout high school. Like, that's one of my best friends. So when I went in the second time, I pretty much texted him and was like, you want to play together again? Like, and that's pretty much just what it came down to. I wasn't really worried about anything else. I was like, I'm going to go play with Ed for a couple of years and see what happens. So
when you decide to come to URI was in the midst of probably one of the worst eras of football for them. There were a couple 1-win seasons, a couple winless seasons, and you kind of look at that. It's an FCS program, so obviously you're talking the level of competition that's below FBS. It's still competitive, but there's obviously a vast difference. When you're going into a program like that, obviously you've got Ed, you've got the camaraderie, you've got the friendship. Like, there's going to be a sense of enjoyment there. But is there a sense of, like, I guess, anxiety, knowing that you're joining a program that's kind of been down on its luck and you don't really know how it's going to improve, or if it's going to positively reflect the type of player that you are?
Honestly, I wasn't really thinking about it. I feel like I have a lot of confidence in myself and in the coaches when I was being recruited, and just hearing about the team. Maybe it's cockiness, I don't really know, but I just felt like we were going to find a way no matter what it took. And I feel like we've been doing that over the past few years. Just got to do it a little bit more.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And like what we were talking about before the show, Coach Fleming, once he took over the reins, he's been steadily improving this squad, and then he's been adding pieces in here and there, and then you were one of those pieces, and the squad's been steadily improving. I mean, like, your first year, 5 of 10 for passes for 26 yards and 1 touchdown against Delaware. You rushed for 25 yards against Albany, and you made your Rhode Island debut against Villanova. Those are your real career highlights from your redshirt junior, your first season. So you're making baby steps getting in there. And then the next year, you're given the reins. That's when you start. 2021, it was my freshman year. That was the first season where it was really your sort of show. You were entrusted with the reins of that team. The squad was really starting to come together, and it showed on the field. I mean, just sort of walk me through just how that initial feeling was when the coaching staff, maybe they sat you down and explained the plan to you, or just like how that start to the season was in 2021, knowing that, all right, I'm here, I'm ready, this is my team now, I'm able to take charge.
Yeah, I just think coming off of that spring season, there was just a lot of confidence from the team because we went 2-1 that spring. I think both teams were ranked that we beat too, and we lost to a Delaware team that went to the semifinals in the playoffs. So I just feel like there was a lot of confidence coming off of that. Same group of guys back, get a couple people back that were hurt in that spring, and I just feel like the coaching staff, entrusted in all of us, and just put the ball in our hands and let us go be us. I mean, that's the best part about our staff. Like, they have a lot of faith in us as players, as people, and they just let you go be you.
And obviously that trust was well-founded. 2,100 passing yards. You had 18 touchdowns. You rushed for 256 yards. And, I mean, just going through all the trials and tribulations of getting hurt, then having to hop in the portal, then hopping in the portal again, there's a lot that can, like, weigh on players. Like, you see it across all sports. Like, there's a big mental aspect, like a big mental gap that you really need to jump in order to stay competitive. And once you kind of found your feet in 2021, just how difficult is it to sort of just, in a sense, keep the confidence that you had? Because you seem like a very confident guy. You're a confident guy. You played exceptionally well in high school, obviously 4-star recruit, all of that. There was meaning behind all of that. But going into Maryland and then having to go to Tennessee, then dropping down to FCS or URI, how are you able to sort of keep your mental toughness in check amidst switching so many schools?
It was definitely a battle. Definitely a battle that I went through, and I know, it's just a lot of mental challenges dealing with being a student athlete and then dealing with the adversity that you go through on a yearly or weekly basis. But I just feel like I had to prove it back to myself, whether that was with hard work or whatever I did on the field. I just was going to prove it back to myself, and that took the pressure of, like, everybody else's expectations away from it and just gave myself something to go do rather than something to focus on.
And when you sort of talk about, like, you want to, like, just sort of remove yourself in that sense and kind of keep yourself grounded, there's always the outside noise that you have to deal with, especially with a program that's starting to become successful because the fans start to get really into it and everything like that. In terms of, like, dealing with the outside noise from this regard, because, like I said, URI football wasn't very successful over the past couple of decades. Like, it was a program that was inconsistent at best. And as a guy coming in, really taking off, you start to see yourself climb into football record books, especially here at URI, obviously. You start to see yourself becoming, like, writing your name in a bunch of different categories, amongst guys who are some of the greatest athletes to have ever played here. So when people mention that sort of stuff to you and they talk about like, oh, you're one of the best quarterbacks the school's ever seen and stuff like that, how do you still keep yourself separate in a way? Because like you're allowed to relish in it, but you want to also keep yourself grounded. So how do you separate yourself from that?
Yeah, I mean, it's always, an accomplishment to, see yourself in a record book. And an honor to, be mentioned with those guys that are already there. But I always say you got to keep the main thing. And the main thing is winning football games. And, I'd rather throw for 1 yard and win the game than throw for 500 and lose. So whatever it takes to go out there and do my job and execute and to win games, I'm perfectly fine doing it. But I think that's the, biggest thing for me and for everybody, just keeping what your main goal is the main goal.
And so then coming off of 2021, it was evident that this squad was poised to take a significant leap because everyone was starting to realize that Rhode Island has a competent team for the first time in a very long time, and making the FCS playoffs was attainable. And that was basically the goal. I mean, like, speaking to so many different players from that 2022 squad, that was the goal end of. Like, it was to make the playoffs. It was to finally break the duct. So kind of coming off of 2021, knowing the expectations that were in play, what was just like that summer like though, just leading up into 2022, you had a number of guys coming in, like you had Katero Summers coming in, you had a number of receivers and running backs like Marcus DeShields came in. What were the feelings and like what were just sort of the vibes leading into that season?
I think the vibes were pretty high. Was that last summer? I think everybody just had a good attitude and a good feeling about the year going into it. And, that summer we worked really hard with Coach Leach and with each other in our own free time. But, I mean, it was a really close-knit group. We had guys that had been here for a while, a lot of 6-year guys, and just guys where they gave everything to this program. So I felt like going into last year, everybody did have the same mission. Like, we wanted to at least make the playoffs. And, the vibes were very high throughout the season.
And having transfers come in at such critical positions, having people come in at wide receiver, having people come in at running back, positions that are so integral to the offense, there's always questions of like, how quickly is the chemistry going to go? Like, how quickly are these players going to understand each other in terms of how they play the game? Was it sort of a quick combination? Like, once you guys all started to get a couple reps in practice, like, was it just sort of like an easy mesh?
Yeah, I think all the personalities that we had clicked well, too. So, like, you got a guy like Katero who's a big, like, he jokes around a lot. And then, Marcus DeShields feeds off of that. And then, Ed's over there doing whatever. And then, everybody just meshed really well, which I think led to, how we played on offense. We were just out there having fun pretty much. And, I feel like it showed.
And so then you had talked about there were a lot of 6-year guys. There were definitely some guys who have been at the university for longer than you, but you were still elected as a team captain. And just given your college career history, what was that feeling like, knowing that, all right, I now have a home? Like, I've officially made it to this point where, like, I'm completely respected and admired by a bunch of my teammates. Like, I'm entrusted by them. What was just that feeling like when you had been named one of the team captains?
That was one of the best feelings throughout my time here. Like you said, it just felt like I had the whole trust of everybody. And that was one of my goals going into last year. And it just meant a lot, especially with everything that went on. I wasn't somebody that had been there forever. But, yeah, it meant a lot to me.
And so then going into the season, like I said, the expectations were high, but you take them all away from the fans. Players and coaches have their own set of expectations. They're way more specific. They're way more goal-oriented. It's goals that you set before preseason camp starts that you work and build up towards. I mean, you talk about you were named one of the National Performers of the Year in the midseason watch list during the middle of the year, but that was just some of the stuff that coaches were almost going to expect from you, considering what was going on last year and just the talent that you had. But when you talk about from a player perspective, what were just some of the goals and just what was the mission of that team? Like, obviously, making the FCS playoffs. But I feel like that there's got to be sometimes more than that to an extent.
Yeah. Trying to remember, we always have a pyramid going into the season, at least as a unit, as an offense, about what our 6 goals are for the year. Trying to remember last year's instead of this year's. I know one of them on there is an average 30-plus points, but it's usually stuff about just like effort, playing for the guy next to you, things like that. Just making sure that you protect the name on the front and then let the name on the back do what he does.
And, I mean, you guys were able to do it. You were averaged 30.6 points a game during that season. It was the 3rd highest scoring offense in the CAA. I mean, what do you credit being able to average that many points? I mean, like, obviously there's the connections between you and your receivers that go beyond football. And then obviously the trust you have in your offensive line to hold the pocket for you and to create space for someone like the Shields to really rush. I mean, there's so many gears that come into having an offense like that. I mean, just like, what are some of the factors that really allow for an offense to flourish like it did? Always
Shout out to the O-linemen, all the O-linemen out there. Can't do anything with the bad O-line. And, I think throughout my time here, there's always been a great O-line and just makes everything easier. It's something you never have to worry about. But aside from, like, personnel, I think, as I was saying before, everybody's personalities just meshed well. Like, when you really care about the people that you're playing with, you'll go that extra step. You'll go those 3 more feet that we always talk about. And I think that, last year really embodied that. This year too, but last year really embodied it.
And so obviously you on a personal level were able to be exceptionally successful. A career high 2,500 passing yards, 19 touchdowns with only 7 interceptions. And you rushed for 272 yards and 7 rushing touchdowns. It's funny watching your game because it's clear that you're a poised pocket passer. And you really take advantage of, obviously, that trust in the O-line to allow you to hold the pocket and really take the time to figure out who's making the right route. But you're mobile when you need to. And it was on full display last year. Has being like a mobile sort of pocket passer, like a fusion quarterback of like that, has that always been a part of your game? Or is that something that you've sort of developed as you've learned how the college game goes?
I think it's something I've always had in my game. Maybe I was probably a little bit wilder when I was younger, like not sliding and trying to run people over and showing them I'm not soft. But I feel like it's always been a part of it. When the defense was to try to take away everything else, it's hard to prepare for a quarterback that uses his legs. So, yeah.
And I mean, last season you play Bryant, like it's always the family weekend game.
Yeah.
It's always that's usually one of the most emotionally charged games that you can play as a Rhode Island Ram. Meade Stadium is packed, and this is pre-renovation and everything. Like Meade Stadium is packed, and Bryant comes, and you just curb stomp them. Like realistically, that's what happened. When you're playing in an atmosphere like that, even though it's FCS, but you have a school that has been so deprived of true football and true competitiveness in football, to provide fans with a win like that, what's that feeling like?
It feels good. Any win feels good, but especially when you do it against, an in-state rival. We're playing for the state against them and Brown every single year. And then when the ruckus gets going, you can just feel the energy and just build off of it. It really feels like it's the whole stadium against the other sideline, which is the best part. It's a great feeling.
And so then the Brown game as well. The Brown game was the Governor's Cup. That's an interesting little trophy because every state seems to have their own version of the Governor's Cup. And it's fascinating to see the smaller states do it because you overlook states like Rhode Island, you overlook states like Delaware, Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, like all the smaller schools that are competing for that sort of thing. But it's a very competitive game. And I mean, you look at this is one of your best games of the year. 331 total yards of offense, passed for 2 touchdowns, you rushed for another 78 yards. I mean, when you're going into a game like that, whether it's the Brown game, whether it's the Bryant game, when it's an in-state rival or it's just a game that obviously carries a lot of emotion from the fan base, is there a different feeling ahead of those types of matchups, or do you still try to look at it at least as just like, all right, it's just another game, it's just another non-conference game?
Try to look at it as just another non-conference game, but we're playing for the state. We're the only school playing for the cup and for the rights to call it our state that has Rhode Island in the name. So we want to make sure that it stays the right way and stays with URI.
And it's a game that really brings like a lot of emotion out of the fans. And I mean, like you said, it's a game for Rhode Island. It matters more. Because at the end of the day, like, people will probably sometimes forget about the Governor's Cup and stuff like that. But in the moment, it's an exhilarating feel.
Yeah.
And I mean, you got to imagine just like you're hoisting that cup. I mean, that picture is iconic. I think Connor called it.
Connor got it. Yeah.
He got that. He got the one with everyone hoisting the cup. I mean, you got to feel like, yeah, you won. You beat an in-state rival, but just having that cup, that's got to add a little bit more to it, does it?
Oh no, it definitely does. Especially, we take the cup, so it's definitely a big plus.
That's so awesome. And so that's a pivot in more of an upsetting one, but it's like you have a game like that against Brown, but then you've also got games during the season like that against Pitt, where you're brought up against really serious FBS opponents. And I mean, you're a guy that's had experience playing in FCS. FBS. You know the competition difference. But I mean, you guys put up a valiant effort against Pitt. It was a solid game.
Yeah.
So I mean, like you said, you try to keep every game sort of like, all right, it's just another game. It's just another non-conference game. Play it the same way. But I mean, for you having the experience that you have, do you look at it, or at least from like a tactical standpoint, do you look at it differently? Like
playing against somebody like Pitt?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I felt like I looked at it differently going into that just because of the experience of playing in some stadiums and atmospheres like that. But it was still like, I've never played at Pitt before, so that was cool. But yeah, you try and keep it as normal as possible. Me personally, I try and keep my routine pretty much the same every single week. But sometimes it's hard not to recognize what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, being able to play in a stadium like that is really cool. And I remember watching it on ESPN. It was a surprise. It was on like national television. Because Pitt were, I think, 24th that week. Yeah. So you're talking a nationally ranked program taking on URI. And you guys gave them a game. It was like 42-24 or something like that.
Something like that.
It was.
They had the punt return touchdown.
Yeah.
They scored with a minute left.
And it was like it was a big game from the Pitt defense. Obviously, it was an uphill battle for you guys to really take them on. But you go into Pitt, no one expecting you to win. I honestly believe that ESPN had Pitt as like 98% favorites to win that game. So when you go in with odds like that in the face of great adversity, and you come out with like a reasonable result, you gotta at least take some solace in the fact that you lost, but you still came away with something.
Yeah, I think we took that away. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's why I was gonna ask. Like, when you go in for results like that, knowing that it's difficult, and if you lose, like, still disappointing, but do you still take a lot of positives away from games like that, knowing that it could have been worse?
Yeah, you definitely take away, the good things that happened with the game, then realize, like, hey, left a couple things out there that maybe if those things happen, be even closer game, or who knows what would have happened. But yeah, definitely take the good things away from it.
There's a clip from that game that I see circulating a lot, and I want to get your opinion on it. The onside kick at the end of the game from the kicker. Just obviously you're not on defense, so you weren't like on the field for what was going on there. But I mean, just like when you saw them, like when you saw that guy go for the onside kick, what was your thought when you saw that?
I was like, what are they doing? I didn't know it. And then I know Coach Powell from Pitt, their special teams coach. He used to be at Maryland for a little bit, so I saw him start yelling at him. I thought it was hilarious.
It was really funny. I mean, I saw the clip roll up on Twitter recently because it's like, it always makes you laugh that I go to Rhode Island, and that's a clip that will live in college football infamy. And he did it just because he wanted to.
Yeah,
like,
he
there
just
was
felt
no,
like it.
He felt like doing it. There was something about, I don't know if there was something about like a defensive call from like the previous drive that he was unhappy about. He's like, all right, screw these guys. Like I'm doing this. I mean, hey, that was some Pat McAfee-esque type stuff. You got to give him credit.
Yeah, I respect it. Hey.
Yeah, game is game.
Yeah.
Exactly. But I mean, still, you take the positives from a loss like that, and then you move on to bigger and better things. But one result that it's difficult to take the positives from, New Hampshire.
Yeah.
That was probably, well, no, not probably. It was the most pivotal game of the year.
Yep.
I feel like many would say that would be the game that decided who was making the playoffs.
Yep.
And I mean, I want to just talk about that game because it's a cold winter game.
Yeah, that was
it's just not fun.
Yeah.
But the stakes are exceptionally high. Just now, as you get later into the season, knowing that, all right, there's a chance to really make history, what's kind of the feeling when you're going into a game like that against, like, a serious conference rival?
Makes it more fun. I mean, everything's on the line. You got two teams who want the same thing, and whoever wins gets what they want. So, I mean, that just makes it more fun to me. There's a lot more on the line. Stakes are higher.
And so you had the exhilarating finish against Monmouth, which was fantastic. But you go in to New Hampshire, you play a great game, 222 passing yards, you got 2 touchdowns, you rushed for 43 yards, and I think you scored. So you had a great game. But then that final drive, it all starts to unravel slowly. I mean, just like watching from the sidelines, like what were you feeling during that last drive as New Hampshire just continuously just kept pushing and pushing and pushing? What were you feeling?
I was nervous, but I had full faith that we were going to get a stop. Like, I mean, we did get a stop, but we know.
Yeah.
But I just had full faith that we were going to find a way to get it done. And then if it did so happen that we didn't get it done, then how much time is left? What do we need to do? What do we have? Where we have to get? Like, I was preparing for that side of it too. But yeah, just stressful not being able to control what you want to control.
Yeah, that's one of the worst things is being an athlete, especially when you're playing a game where it's not everybody on the field at the same time. You're standing there, you're like, come on, boys, like you got to get this. You need to do it for us. And I mean, for fans that don't remember this, which is impossible, it would be surprised if you didn't remember this. New Hampshire basically walked it off with a last minute touchdown that was ruled as a catch, but upon review, there were a number of photographers that were standing behind the end zone that were recording the catch, and you can tell that the receiver, I don't remember his name, did not have control of the ball.
DJ Lincoln's. St. John's guy.
Oh.
Yeah, not a favorite St. John's guy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But that's that definitely doesn't help.
Yeah, no,
but it's
not at all.
But he did not have control of the ball. And for some reason it wasn't reviewable. Did they have like the capability to review there?
The camera, what we were told was that the camera in the back of the end zone that was facing right at where he caught it was out. Like not working. It got messed up during the game and just wasn't working.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's a wild sort of just. You feel like that you kind of feel hard done after you get the excuse like that, right?
It was tough, yeah.
Yeah, and like obviously like the next couple of days everyone's coming back, you're all hearing about it. Like you got the photographers coming back being like, look at this, look at this. Yeah, you got the Patrick Beverly meme guy taking the camera showing the official, look, he didn't catch it. But no, everyone watching that on TV saw the same thing. And you feel for you guys because that's completely out of your control. That's like a beyond a football issue. Like there's nothing you can do about that. And I mean, that's more on the officiating, more on the crew and whatever. Like obviously you should have plans in place to, in the event something like that happens to the camera. But at the same time, you lose. There's not much else you can do. And you kind of just have to hope and pray. You go up against Albany. Strong game against Albany. And then that's it. It's all in the committee's hands at that point. And you look at it. You look at the FCS playoffs, and for people that don't really follow the FCS that much, the outside of Rhody fans, the FCS playoffs are a fascinating way it works because the college football playoffs, it's four teams. The committee picks them, and that's all filled with its own controversies and questions and so on. But the FCS playoffs is 12 teams, correct? It's a
24.
It's a 24 team bracket now? Is it always been like that?
Or yeah, because the first seeded 8 get a bye the first week.
Yeah.
And then the other 16 play, and then.
Oh wow, I feel unprepared. I should have known that. That's okay. That obviously, to just explain that to FCS fans, 24 team bracket, and you get a wide variety of teams from across the country competing in this. The games are spectacular, but you would think that in that manner, Rhode Island would have had a shot. Near the top in the CAA, strong wins, strong performances against FBS teams, but then the committee comes back. The committee decides not to let you guys in. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, you guys were obviously all together watching the selection show and stuff like that. What were the feelings when that decision came in?
A lot of anger, a lot of sadness, a lot of confusion, disappointment, obviously. But, I mean, we felt like we had put enough to get the job done, and they didn't pick us. That was the second year in a row having that feeling. So, yeah, it sucked, especially with a lot of the guys that had helped bring the program up from 2017, guys like Henry Yanakopoulos and Jake Fire and Malik Gavick and Ed, and it's a lot of guys that had been there for a while. It sucked. So, tough day.
Yeah, a tough day. I mean, once that decision comes in, I mean, how quickly do you go from like, all right, we're playing football to it's the off season? Like, is it like a quick turnaround, or is there just sort of like a debrief sort of period where you guys are still kind of working out together, still taking it all in? Because I mean, like at that point when you're close, like, do you start like? Was there at any point where you guys were expecting or hopefully optimistic that you guys are going to get in?
Yeah, after we beat Albany, and I think Villanova beat Delaware that day.
Yeah, they did. They did beat Delaware.
We were feeling pretty good. Like we thought, because that put us over Delaware in the CA. I think we finished 3rd or 4th in the CA rankings. I think 4th, but we had beat Elon too, who finished 3rd. So we were feeling good. And then, next day was rough.
Yeah, and so then once that day passes, I mean, how like I said, how quickly is it? Yeah, you go from like, all right, this is the football season to season's over. Like, is there just like you guys go clean out the locker room? Like, is there like a time where they give you to sort of debrief from everything, or is it just quick?
They give you that. So I think that next week we had time. Next week, 2 weeks, we had time to go and talk to the coaches. We had a team meeting at some point. I don't remember where in that week. In the first week, probably Monday or Tuesday, had a team meeting. Said bye to all the seniors, and we kind of. If you were hurt or banged up, you didn't really lift as much, but you had times to go lift. But we kind of just throw a little temper tantrums and sulked a little bit all together.
That must have been a weird feeling for you, considering like you were one of those seniors. Yeah. You were one of the guys that everyone expected that, for the most part, his career in college is done. He's given his time. He's moving on to better things. Was your thought on returning? Did you have that during that time? Like, or were you thinking about it, or were players aware that you were thinking about it?
Yeah, it was. Everybody was aware that I was thinking about it, and I told everybody I would tell them by my birthday, which is in December. So, like, I probably took a week and a half off for thinking about it just because I didn't want to deal with it. And then I had to talk to the parents, and then the coaches, and finally came to the decision. But yeah, very weird time.
And so, like, what was your exit interview like? Because, I mean, like, I imagine that Fleming and, like, the OCs, like, they all have, like, an idea about what they want to talk about for the guys that are graduating. Because there's, like, not a script per se, but, like, you talk about the same sort of stuff because you don't really know what words to say. But for you, with the speculation of, like, is he going to go? Is he going to stay? Like, what was that exit interview like?
It was, like, honestly, it was kind of funny to me because, like, we talked about the season a little bit, but then obviously neither one of us knew what was about to happen next. So it was just like, you know how like you just have those awkward standoffs sometimes? It just kind of felt like that. And we both just started laughing. And then I told them I'll figure it out over the next couple of weeks, and obviously I'll be talking back and forth with them. But, yeah, it wasn't very long.
Yeah, and then, over the spring sort of session, you start to see the program changing. Mm-hmm. Coaches leave, coaches come in. Players leave, players come in. There were a number of guys that it was a fascinating time to be a Rhodey football fan, because there were a number of guys that were hopping in the portal. You didn't know where they were going to go. Johnny Cornelius, we were talking about him before, now a stud at Oregon, an absolute stud, will be on NFL draft boards next year.
100%.
100%. Absolute stud. Antonio Carter was another guy that was sought after in the transfer portal.
Tone.
I feel like he was a guy that was sort of flew under the radar a bit. Yeah. All the news was talking about AJ.
Yep.
Everyone was talking about one of the most sought after FCS transfers in the country, whatever. But Antonio was a guy that he really held his own, and he had some serious offers.
Yeah.
Now he's in Notre Dame. He had offers from it was Wisconsin, Ole Miss, West Virginia. There were some serious programs that were looking at him. So there was a lot of talent that was on this program that needed to get replaced.
Yep.
And so you go into that spring. You're obviously still trying to figure your stuff out, because now it's in the NCAA's hands.
Yeah.
You got that waiver. You got to wait for the waiver. But just as the spring is going, how do you sort of operate? Are you operating under the assumption that you're going to come back, or are you operating under the assumption that I'm just trying to stay fit for maybe the pre-draft process? What's that sort of like?
Yeah, because I didn't get my decision until February, I don't think. Late February. So that first month, coming back in January, was just okay, I couldn't do everything with the team. And then, I was just doing school and working out in the weight room when I could, just trying to stay nearby everybody. But, yeah, it was kind of weird. It was I'm either, feel like a creep, working out with the team right now, or, this is the team.
Yeah,
it was weird.
It had to have been bizarre. And then, obviously, guys in the team are probably, trying to keep their emotions in check, because they don't want to get too excited, being oh, okay, we got another year with Kasim, we can run it back and whatever. But then, because they don't want to be oh no, his waiver got rejected.
Yeah.
And but obviously February, you get approved. That must have been exhilarating.
Oh yeah, I remember I was in the academic advising office when Casey came down and told me, and I just remember laying off. I screamed really loud. Probably said some things I shouldn't have in there, but it's a big scream, running around throughout the building. Yeah, it was a good day.
That's awesome. What was the news? Did you tell Flem, or did Flem know before you knew? How was that conversation? So
Casey came down and told me, and then we walked up together to Flem, and it was just a good celebration.
That's awesome. And Coach Flem is a funny guy, because he doesn't seem like he has too many emotions, or he's a guy that likes to keep himself kind of reserved.
Yeah.
He lets it out a little bit during press conferences.
He lets it out a little.
He lets it out a little, but he's not a guy that gets super emotional.
Yeah.
I have to imagine he was excited.
No, he was.
That's awesome. And so then now you're back. It's official. You're coming back for your 7th year. Just saying that must have been weird, being I've been playing college football for 7 years.
Yeah.
Is that sort of bizarre when you think about it?
Oh, it's definitely crazy, because it definitely wasn't the plan coming out of high school. Obviously, everybody has that dream of doing 3 to 4 years and then moving on to the next step. But yeah, I'm appreciative of the journey that's brought me on. It's led me to a different version of myself than when I came in through high school, and I met a lot of great people along the way, so I'm definitely thankful for it, even though it sucked in some parts.
Yeah, it seemed like it was strenuous, but you were able to just really land on your feet and build a home here, because you're adored by so many people from this university, from the community around here. So that must feel great to know that all right, this is home. I've landed. This is where I am. And so just kind of going through, you hit February, you hit March, the weather's getting warmer, you're starting to get that spring ball session back. A lot of new guys are coming in.
Yep.
You got a lot of guys coming into the fold, because Ed leaves, Marcus leaves. You got a number of guys on the defensive side of the ball left. So there's a lot of holes that need to be filled. Just what were your initial thoughts and reactions to some of the transfers that came in? Were you instantly or was it gradual in terms of like, all right, like this could be the team that does it?
Yeah, I think it was gradual because, obviously what we know now is that we brought in a lot of great people and all the young guys developed into the people we expected them to be or whatever. But, you got to go out there and prove it. And, I think everybody did a great job of working their butts off in the spring and this summer of getting to where we are now. You got guys like Saeed, who was on scout defense going against us every single day last year. And, he looks great this season. We all expected that from him. He went out there and did it, and he's proven it. Guys like Marquise Buchanan, that we saw the talent, and now he's going out there and giving us the product of it. And guys like John Irby that, fought through tough injuries and came back. And I think it's just been exciting, getting all the new guys and just introducing them to the culture and the team that we have and, the coaching staff and just getting them immersed in the community. I think all that has led to, some of the success that we're having now and hopefully the success that we have going forward.
And, it's been apparent that there's a lot of talent at your disposal in terms of offense. I feel like this is probably one of the more well-rounded squads that Rhode Island has seen as of recent memory. And, it even showed against Georgia State. Like, Georgia State's a competitive program, but you guys were giving them a serious game throughout. But one of the big headlines that came out of that game was just Katero Summers being Katero Summers. Obviously it's going to take a lot to replace that relationship that you had with Ed, because Ed, walk on, smaller sort of slot receiver guy that had unbelievable speed. Your sort of relationship with him definitely helped the performances on the field. Yeah. And then so seeing him graduate, you now have to not reform a new friendship, but try and build something of a similar standard to that. And Katero, from the outside looking in, seems like he's that guy now. Just like, what's it been like playing with Katero over the summer and then now kind of moving into these first couple games? He's really showed out, and he's been arguably your top receiver this year.
Yeah. I think the first thing about Katero is that we've lived together for the past 2 summers. So, we see each other every single day. We talk about different things, football, outside of football. I think that's made our bond stronger. But, with Katero, with a guy like Katero, he's very competitive. You're not going to line up face-to-face in something that both the people going to go across from each other can do, and he's just not going to let you beat him. He has that mental toughness to say, I'm putting my foot down and I'm not losing. And I think that shows up for him on the field, the way that he runs routes, the way he attacks the ball. He's just a dog. Like Deion puts the D on the chest for dog, that's what he is.
And it's really cool to see that you have a guy that's been in the program, transferred in last year. He had a decent year last year, probably like wide receiver 2, 3 in that range. But knowing that the pressure is on, because when Ed leaves, you need to have someone really step up and be like, all right, I'm that guy. I'm that one. You can trust me. Give me the ball, and I'll create stuff. Having that sort of guy that knows his role and executes it almost flawlessly, how big of a boost is it to have someone like that?
I think it's a big boost to the offense just because, in the role that he's in and what we expect from him every single week and just the tenacity that he brings, it brings an identity to the offense within itself. And I think a lot of people feed off of it. So always a big boost having him out there.
And so then taking into account others like Darius Savage, Marquise Buchanan, guys that really kind of came out of nowhere, like especially for Rhodey fans. Like I myself, I'm a journalist here. I didn't really know much about Marquise Buchanan's game. And then he comes in, he has 3 receptions and 2 touchdowns in his first 2 games. I remember asking Coach Flum about it after the Stony Brook game. And it was like, where did this kid come from? And he was pleasantly surprised for sure about Marquise's work ethic and just his ability, especially ability on the go routes. But just from a quarterback perspective, when you've got a kid that young who's a raw, talented receiver, how is having him sort of get off the block so well so early, how big of a boost is that in terms of really molding him into a receiver that can benefit your game?
I think it's a big boost. With all of our receivers, just when you have that confidence, and when they have that confidence and they're going out there and playing like themselves, like, it's really tough to stop them. And, I think Marquise is a good example of him getting that confidence early, especially when you're a younger guy, just because, like how I had to prove it to myself coming back from injuries, he's trying to prove it to himself, and he's been out there proving it to himself. And, as I was telling you, my dad told me about Marquise when he was coming out of high school. He was like, yeah, you guys just got this kid from classical high school. I think he's going to be pretty good. I was like, classical high school in Rhode Island? And then he showed me his tape. I was like, okay, yeah, this kid has something to him. But yeah, he's been balling this year. And
it showed 35-14 win over Stony Brook, first home game of the year. That was an incredible atmosphere.
Yeah.
That was I was sitting in the press box watching that from above. You're looking down, one of the biggest crowds I've seen at Meade. That was one of I haven't seen a sellout crowd at URI in a very long time. That was incredible.
That was awesome.
And just you talked about when the ruckus gets going and everything like that. They changed the stands to get the ruckus right behind you guys, almost to match all of the the publications and the literature that they put out about the Ryan Center, all the promotion photos. They now have all the students right there.
Right there.
You must be able to hear almost everything that's being said out of there.
It's crazy. I can't hear any
really?
Yeah, the only people I hear in the stands are my parents, my little sister, and my girlfriend. That's the only people I hear during the games.
That's fascinating. Is it just sort of you mentally block out everything else and you just can hear their voice and it's all right, I know they're there.
Yeah. That was the only 4 people I hear. And then on the field, obviously, you hear noise, but you don't hear
it's static at that point.
Yeah. It's it feels more like an energy than actual noise.
Huh. That's an interesting way of putting that. I've never really seen. You don't really get to get that perspective when it's because you're in a position where it's you're playing the most important position on the field. Mm-hmm. So you're the one that's surveying the entire game. You're surveying all of the surroundings, and then that atmosphere adds to that.
Yeah.
And it's an atmosphere that it's intimidating even as a player for URI. Mm-hmm. You got to imagine because we've talked about the expectations so many times today, but you look at a crowd like that, you see 5,000 people cascading up that main Meade bleachers, and then you got all the other people on the other side by the Ryan Center. Just when you're on the field and you look up, have you ever taken a second to take all of that in?
Yeah. After Marquise's touchdown, I was sprinting down the field, and my mind relaxed. I didn't have to think about anything else. So I could hear the noise, and I was just and I looked over and just looked up, and it was just whole place is going crazy. I'm just whew, this is insane.
Yeah, it's so cool to just be able to see that, and the photos that you get, it's just unbelievable. And then that's the culture that's here. That's the culture that I feel has been completely reignited by you, by Flem, by all of the players that have been here over the past couple of years, and all the coaches. There has been a complete revitalization of the football culture here. And it's impressive. It really is, especially for an FCS school that doesn't have that much footballing history. It's to see that many people show out for URI is incredible. And the game didn't really. It was just a Friday Night Lights game. It's not like the game really had that much meaning. Stony Brook is a team that's competitive, yes, but it's not been one that's historically given URI, or at least over the past few years, given URI that much trouble. So to see everyone show out for a game like that was really cool. So then, ahead of the Bryant game tomorrow, you've had 2 other games. You go up to Maine, you win up in Maine. Another game where it was it's another one, you're expected to win that, more or less a routine one. Then you play your first nationally ranked FCS opponent in Villanova. Mm-hmm. That game did not go well.
Yeah, it did not go well.
Suffice to say, it did not go well at all. Just without going into too much of just individual crazy performances, stuff like that. What do you think? What were factors that sort of just compounded that result? 9-35 is not one that you're going to want to look back fondly on.
Yeah, credit to them. They went out there and executed on the given day, and whooped us. We got to take that, but just feel we never really played our game. We never, that's not who we are as a team. Yeah, we never got into a rhythm of what we wanted to do, and it was just a tough loss. lost on offense, defense, special teams, everything. And we talked about it as a team, but put it behind us and ready to move on and ready to go get a win tomorrow.
I mean, yeah, you have the opportunity to bounce back tomorrow, and then you have the rest of the season to right off the wrongs from that. So, I mean, just we're coming toward the end of our time, but I'm just curious, what are your expectations going forward? You're a man that really prides himself on team over everything. Like, live and die by the win at Meade or wherever it is. Rhode Island needs to get a win. That's all you care about.
Yeah.
And just sort of going forward, knowing that the coaches are acclimated, knowing that the transfers are acclimated, knowing that everything seems to be gelling, what are your expectations going forward?
My expectations for the team is to take it day by day. I mean, that's all. Control what you can control right in front of you, because, I mean, that's what you have to do in the given moment. When you start looking ahead to, to next week, that's how you lose the week that you're in. But win every single day, play with effort, and play for the person next to you, and, things handle themselves. When we do that, it's really tough to beat us.
And I think I know your answer to this question, but are you thinking at all about any of the records that are within reach for you at the end of the year?
I knew what they were before the season, but not thinking about them now. Just trying to go win.
Something you can talk about during your exit interview.
Yeah. Let's get the record of no playoffs since '85 done.
Yeah, exactly. That's, I think, the one that fans are going to be excited for the most. And I mean, just one final thing. 7th year, this is the last ride.
Yeah.
It is. Every Rhodey fan listening to this just shed a single tear. But, I mean, Rhode Island and beyond, do you have an idea about what you want to do after this? Like, is the NFL is that what you want to do now? That's the goal?
NFL's the goal. If NFL doesn't work out, want to get into sports media or becoming a scout, GM role kind of thing.
Oh, I mean, you've got all of the experience in terms of playing ability to really back all that stuff up. Could see yourself doing an excellent job in that Greg Olson color role down the line. A guy that knows his way around a locker room, knows his way around a bunch of different programs. But, I mean, Kasim, this has been an absolute pleasure.
Great.
Thank you for joining me. I've been so happy and privileged to have watched you play over the past 2 years, and I'm excited to see what the rest of the season goes. Good luck tomorrow, and just good luck for the rest of the year.
Thank you. Appreciate you, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course, man. Well, Rhodey Nation, that's it for this week on Marks Remarks. We will see you back here at WRIU, same time, 3 to 4, next Friday, and I'll see you guys in the next one.